Hi, Thomas. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation and for sharing with us your views and your knowledge about this link that we see so important, having universities connected with citizen science. So overall, I'm curious to know, why is this link important? Why citizen science and universities should be together, and why do you think this is so relevant?
Thank you, Andrea, first of all, for having me. I'm very proud that you reached out to me. I think, first of all, citizen science is this fantastic movement, both within research, but also within citizen groups and society. And I think the metaphor you could probably make is, right now it's blooming. There's 1,000 beautiful flowers that are blooming in all kinds of directions. And some of us who works at universities have seen the power that if you try to harness, or if you try to support this, this is what I do at my university. I support researchers who want to venture into citizen science. I think it can bring amazing results, both for citizens and researchers. And I think it's something that is really worth for universities to invest in.
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds really relevant and interesting to look more into detail. So another thing that you do very important is to be the chair of this new working group at ECSA about citizen science and universities. And there you share the aim of advocating for citizen science within the universities. What does advocacy mean in the practice?
I think in practice, it's some very concrete measures that I would like to elaborate on. But I think before I do that, I think it's really important, working at a university and working with researchers, is to ask why. Why should researchers venture into society? Or you could also ask sort of the big why. And coming from a university, I think, first of all, in my experience, a lot of researchers are really curious and have heard about citizen science, but are to some degree really unsure what it is. Mm-hmm. And also they are becoming more and more aware that journals, for example, top journals like Nature and a lot of grant opportunities like Horizon Europe is sort of weighing in on citizen science, and have done this the last few years. So to some degree, the big why for researchers, also if you do advocacy, is something that you actually, I think in my understanding, would need to address. And then also when you do advocacy, before you even try to imagine how you can do it, I think a lot of researchers are not aware what it can actually bring them in sorts of more applicable results or bigger data sets and new journals that they can publish. So really there are a lot of really good, relevant, big reasons to do this. But I guess what you're asking me right now is not the why, but sort of the how. How can you do it? And I think I work at a library. What we have done is, together with a number of faculties, we have opened a citizen science knowledge center. And the one premier reason we have done that, besides doing project management and doing actual concrete citizen science projects, is to do advocacy. And I think what we have done at SDU in order to do that is, I think, 5 or 6 really concrete steps that you could use, or that I could recommend, but would be different from university or institution to institution. What we did, first of all, at SDU was to find out, were there any institutional interest in citizen science? And what we found out was there were actually a few clusters with researchers who have ventured into this, knew what it was. And what we did was sort of like you're doing right now. We interviewed them, we talked to them, we got their thought process. Then, of course, we ventured into where can we seek out relevant knowledge outside of our own university. So what we did was really basic stuff within a university. First of all, we got some governance together. So we got access to researchers. And then we did simple things. We did talks, we did workshops, we did project boosting camps, things where we really got some of the more experienced researchers to talk to some of the researchers who were perhaps not as known into it. And then we start finding out and mapping the researchers. If you want to venture into citizen science, what do you need in terms of infrastructure and support? And it turned out, and I think that is really interesting, it turned out to be, at least coming from a library, and we do research support all the time, it turned out to be fairly basic stuff, really. We need competences and help within communication, scientific communication, how to approach citizens, how to harvest feedback from them. And after we did this mapping exercise, which really were a conversation, it turned out that it was fairly simple stuff, so we could set up research support within this. So it sounds very basic to start a structured conversation, but from my experience and from my own university, I think that is really what we did.
Could you elaborate more on the why and the benefits of citizen science inside universities?
Yes, and I think that would, first of all, a small disclaimer, that would probably be different from every university there is, because universities have different researchers, different profiles, different governance structures, but I think on the overall, there are some things, a few things that might be more general for universities. And I think an example, we work very closely with the health faculty at my university. And the health faculty has invested quite heavily in communities or community-based research and citizen science. And it turns out there are a lot of sort of user experience programs within health science that sort of try to harvest this. But in reality, I heard this and I found that shocking, to be honest. I have very impressed with health science in general, but it takes, if you do a clinical trial, it sometimes takes up to 15 years from when you actually engage the patient or the user until the actual result is applicable to citizens. So I think citizen science has transformational power, that if you as a researcher spend the time, energy, and harvest the results in order to improve your process so it becomes more focused on what results can the citizens take away from this? What sort of data and feedback can you use instead of, citizens or researchers are very good at this causal thing with science. We ask for the data and then we go back and try to sort out what it is. And even though I have the greatest respect for that, because that works in a lot of cases, if you're actually working with things that citizens in the end will use, then citizen science has transformational power for you. So I think in that sense, you get bigger data sets that are more applicable and you get faster results. But there are also another thing that I think universities in general, and I think my own university has sort of acknowledged this. When we started out on this journey of citizen science with STU, After we did our governance, we asked our steering group, we want to do citizen science because of these 4 or 5 good reasons that I mentioned to you. And what we got from feedback from the people who wanted to invest in us, they say, yeah, that's good. Yes, it's very good that you get more data, you get more quicker results that are more applicable to citizens. But what struck me was that some of the good people, our upper level management, that whether we want it or not, have a big say in what we do at a university. They were really sort of worried about how science were perceived in society. Because a lot of decisions that probably should be science-driven today are not science-driven. They are probably more politics-driven. We live in this, I would dare to say, post-factual society. There, at one time, for example, if you take the COVID-19 vaccine, and there are all these trends going around right now, it's the AstraZeneca vaccine that in my country has been put on hold. But in some countries, there are quite a lot of skepticism on whether you should actually, for example, get vaccinated. So I think a really true power of citizen science is the dialogue with citizens that, yes, science can make a difference. Yes, you can participate. Yes, you get a say in the results. And yes, you get the results back. And I think that in itself is a major reason why not only researchers, but universities should invest in citizen science. And I know that is one of the main reasons my own university has chosen to do it. I think it started 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think we were to some degree a little bit lucky or fortunate that the first couple of projects we did had mass market interest or media interest. So we got a lot of feedback from citizens. We got a lot of reach from our projects. And we got a lot of feedback from communities around us that, yes, please, could you do more of this? Not that they actually wrote us and said that they wanted to participate, but that they actually participated and that the researchers in themselves could see the value in that. So my university has invested in citizen science for the last 4 years. We started 5 years ago. And the first year were really what I would call basic advocacy, some of the things I mentioned in one of your first questions. But of course, the investment has grown over time. And we have a more formal structure. And of course, citizen science is very much bottom up. And I have all kinds of respects for that because in most cases, that is probably a very good thing. But my only mission and what we do at STU is that if we coordinate and support the 1,000 flowers that are blooming, I think the results could potentially be bigger and potentially better.
Thomas, and you mentioned that there is support from the university that has been increasing since 5 years ago. And for example, the first amount of money was dedicated for advocacy, for dissemination. And then now, do you have a physical space? Do you have a team committed to that? What is the support, the financial support used in?
We have this very, very tiny physical office. And I don't think I have been there for a year because of COVID-19. But what we do have is we have a virtual office and an organization of people in a matrix where my own library and the faculties have put forward people who work within research support, who aids researchers, and we put them or structure it faculty by faculty, project by project. And we had the good fortune that grant support offices at my university have bought into this. So not only now do we have staff at the faculties and libraries who have done citizen science project in practice, and I think we have done so 18 or 20 of those during the last 4 years. But we also now are being able to harvest some of the results working together with professional support crew who works with grant applications on an international level, which is the EU funding projects, and also know consortia around Europe. Of course, from the citizen science standpoint, we know that as well. But it makes a really huge difference from going to experimenting or exploring citizen science on pilot scale to actually get in touch with researchers in other countries at other universities and with professional support crew that has other competences than I have, who can actually help you write a professional grade research application.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think what we have tried to do is also try to harness some of that and coordinate that. And it turned out a lot of people were working with that already. So it was really more basic coordination. I know that there are very good examples around Europe. You could take the Citizen Science Center in Zurich, for example. They managed to obtain a really big grant and do a project or an office straight up from the bottom, hire people, have their own money. What we have done is much more sort of emerging. It has come gradually. One project, one application, one small success, if you would put it like that, has taken the other. But that also creates a little bit of peer pressure on the governance of the university. And I think what had happened is now we have basic funding for projects, seed money. We have gotten a grant from our own university for at least 2 projects now. We are beginning to get funding for bigger projects. And something I think is really important that I would like to our university has invested quite a lot of money in a talent program for graduate students for citizen science. So we put that together with some of the people who were actually working with it. And I think, to be honest, to actually teach, one thing is to work with very good researchers within citizen science and you know, you take one project a step at the time and you learn a lot of these from these really good researchers on how they do stuff, but actually try to take that back and try to sort of, you know, convert it into teaching. I would say that we have had quite a good learning curve on that, because some of the basic stuff you can get in all kinds of places. There are very good MOOCs around. But what we also had to do was to recruit some of the good people that we work with around Europe who actually came in and helped us teach this. So it's also to say that the citizen science community right now, it's not that super huge. We could not have done that project or that program without reaching out to good colleagues, not in Denmark where we work or where we have our university, but with people from UCL and Barcelona and from Zurich who, you know, without a doubt and without thinking about it, came on board and says, yes, we would like to support you on that. And I think that's one of the things in citizen science that should be really highlighted. We have an excellent community with people who are really, really keen on, you know, engaging colleagues around Europe. And I think also ECSA is really trying to put that forward. So I think that is really recommendable.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that sounds really inspiring and motivating. And do you remember what was this first project, the very first one that captivated the interest of citizens when you just started?
What we did was, it turned out a really unusual citizen science project. And it was unusual to the amount that we were actually unsure whether it was citizen science.
Okay, that's
so what we did
interesting.
was we took 25 researchers from human health and our university hospital and medical faculty, and we did a workshop, and they came up with 5 ideas, and one of them was to put forward a competition for researchers where they could put out and come with suggestions for citizen science project within health science. And a committee of peer reviewers would take out the most viable 5 of them from a medical standpoint. And they were put out to the public. So it was the citizens of my region, which is a region in about 500,000. And the money that were put forward to fund these projects were actually put out to the citizens to decide. And I remember at one point, there were a guy on the steering committee who said, I really love this project, but we are doing X factor for research. But what it turned out was that, first of all, we did a lot of advocacy and communication to the whole region. What is citizen science? We actually included people, ordinary citizens like you and me, in the decision-making process. And what that did was create a whole lot of debate on how should we spend money, what dilemmas do we have, why do we take this project with heart failure and fund that instead of a project on some other disease. Mm-hmm. And that feedback created a lot of activity. And I think we reached out to almost half the people of our region. And I think some 15,000 of them were willing to come on board. And if you take some of the things of citizen science models on reciprocality and dissemination of information, scientific information to the public, and these kinds of things that are some of the core elements of citizen science, we did that. What we did not do was collect primary data. Mm-hmm. But after that, I think my university and university hospital had this sort of wow experience that, oh, we should really invest in this because it has this transformational. It has this that if you engage and communicate and have a dialogue with citizens on their behalf, not because you are really good intellectual researchers that knows a lot of fancy words, but if you include citizens in your research design, it has this opportunity to reach out. And I think you see some examples also on data-driven or some of the internet data projects there are in SciStarter. They have hundreds of thousands of people that are participating, and citizen science can do that.
Mm-hmm. Wow, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I think it has been a very interesting conversation. You have pointed out very key aspects of citizen science that will help us to start conversations here among the group of people that are watching this interview. So once again, Thomas Kaarsted, thank you very much from Denmark. And I will keep you posted on the feedback that we get from the colleagues in Ukraine, and we will stay in touch. So I will stop the recording now. Do you want to say some words as a goodbye?
I will really recommend ECSA for doing this, and also for hosting all the working groups that I also got to be part of. So thank you, and once again, thank you for having me.
Thanks.